Hey guys, welcome to the Seven Figure Box Show. My name is Andrew Frezza, and today we're going to be talking about how to create more content in 2020. And I really want to focus on this idea of creativity because I think a lot of people think of creativity. When they hear that, they think of it as something that's like God-given, that it's a talent that you either have or you don't. And I really learned over the years that creativity is much more of a skill, or I even liken it to more of a fitness, which hopefully you guys can relate to. Is it's something that you need to develop over time, and it's something that you really have to maintain on almost a daily or weekly basis if you want it to be a strong element of what you bring to the table. So that's the first thing, is I want you guys to shift your idea of creativity into something that you can create for yourself or build in as a habit for yourself, rather than something that you have or you don't have. And I think it's appropriate that I'm wearing my Just Show Up shirt today, because that's a huge element of it. It is just showing up to create a video. It is just showing up to write something. And if you do that enough times, eventually you will get good at it. I also think that all of us are just really poor judges of our own creative skill set. We're really hard on ourselves. And a lot of times the stuff that we put out is better than we think. We take for granted how much other people really know. And a lot of the insights that we have to share can be really useful for someone else. So I want to encourage you guys to create more content in 2020, and this video is going to really help you guys do that. So one of my first recommendations for you guys is to have a creative process. And when I'm talking about a creative process, I'm mainly talking about a way to capture ideas as they come to you. I think a lot of us are already having creative ideas throughout our lives, but we don't have a good system for capturing those and getting those down on paper. And I heard it recently somewhere, I'll probably butcher how it was said, and I don't even remember where I heard it. It was something along the lines of, the brain is great at creating ideas, not storing ideas. And I think a lot of us try to use our brains to store information, and we try to hang on to stuff instead of letting our brains create stuff and then having systems to track stuff and be able to revisit in the future. So one of the things that I do to help capture these creative ideas is I use my phone. I use my notes app on my phone if I have the ability to type something up. If I'm driving, I'll bust out my phone and use the voice recorder. If I'm in the shower and an idea comes to me, I'll immediately get out and get to my phone or get to a sheet of paper and try to capture that idea. I think we really overestimate how long an idea is gonna stay with us. And when you have those creative juices flowing, you have to capture those things. So that idea that seems really powerful in the moment, if you let that thing be fleeting, it will be fleeting and it may never return, no matter how powerful that idea is. Another suggestion would be to take it a step further and actually start to build out the idea. So I might think of an idea in the shower for a video that I want to share with you guys, like this creative process idea. And I might think of that and immediately go out of the shower and write that down. But then usually what happens is I have 3 or 4 or 5 bullet points that I want to talk about related to that idea. Usually when that idea first comes to me is when I'm going to have the most supporting points and ideas that are circulating around in my head. So for me, I try not to just capture the main topic at hand, but I try to capture all those supporting ideas as well. And I've personally found that if I can be in the moment, if I can really be immersed in that idea when it comes to me, and I can take 5 or 10 minutes to jot everything down. I'm a pretty fast typer, so I'll usually just bust out my laptop at that point and start typing away in a Microsoft Word document. If I can get those ideas down then, I can actually get a podcast outline done or a blog post done that would normally take me several hours to do. I can usually get 95% of the work done in a matter of a few minutes. So that's one of the biggest things I want to recommend to you guys, is when you have that moment where that creativity hits you and that idea comes in, number one, track it. But if you get those supporting points and you get sort of the makings of a blog post or a podcast or whatever you're trying to create, social media posts, get the rest of that down and build it out on the spot, because if you try to revisit down the road, it's going to be hard to recreate that magic. And then one last thing that I didn't mention is I actually have a running blog post in Microsoft Word that has all the topic ideas separated into different categories. So I have one specifically for the Seven Figure Box podcast that is all these topic ideas that I've gotten over the last 2 years that I haven't yet produced actual podcast videos for. So that's just a running list. And a lot of times when I get time like today to shoot a video, what I do is I revisit that list and I think about what is the thing that feels most relevant to me today? What is the thing that I feel like I can expand upon and really share with people because I'm living in this moment? So right now I'm thinking a lot about creating content in 2020. So this was the perfect time to share with you guys how I'm attacking it myself, how I'm actually teaching our coaches to attack it, because I work with a lot of them one-on-one to create more content and how to be more creative. So having those running documents that separate, social media posts, blog post ideas, podcast ideas, and then broken up on the various, hats you might wear, like gym owner or coach or athlete, really helps whenever you need a topic idea that you want to touch on. Another recommendation that I have is to set a process goal that you want to have and track it. Okay, so what I mean by that is, one thing that I do for this podcast is I've always set Friday as the deadline for myself, and I've always told myself that I'm going to post once a week no matter what, and I have to post by the end of the day on Friday. And I've adhered to that basically for almost 2 years now of posting every single Friday. So number one is not biting off more than you can chew. But then number two, having some kind of deadline or accountability or commitment that you're going to shoot for that's going to help you actually overcome some of the fears of posting in the first place. There's videos that I've shot, there's blog posts that I've written that I don't personally love them, okay? I wish they were a little bit better. I wish all my videos were a lot better, honestly. But I also know that based on the feedback I've gotten and the responses and emails I've gotten, that even though they're not perfect and even though I know that they could be a lot better, I'm still able to deliver a lot of value to people out there. And I think that it really helps to have some kind of system or some kind of deadline or some kind of commitment that you're going to shoot for every single week to help you overcome some of those fears that you might have about posting certain content or sharing certain content. And if you set a goal of I'm going to post every week on Friday, or I'm going to post every Monday and Friday, it really allows you to get over the hump and not be so judgmental on yourself. Another recommendation that I have is to define categories for yourself of types of ideas that you want to share and types of topics that you want to share. I think this works great for social media, especially if you're someone that has influence or you oversee like the social media calendar for your gym. If you're someone that has trouble creating content, if you create categories for yourself, it makes it a lot easier to then fit ideas into those categories. So it might be something like member highlights that you want to do, or athlete of the month features. It could be recipes that you want to post. It could just be nutrition in general. Every Wednesday you're going to do some kind of nutrition topic, and it's going to be either a shopping tip or a meal prep tip, or an eating out tip, right? So if you can create these categories for yourself, then it's going to make it a lot easier for you to generate future ideas that fit into those categories. So an example for the 7-Figure Box podcast would be two of the broad categories that I have is speaking to gym owners and then speaking to coaches, right? I'm usually always speaking to one of those two categories. Within the owner category, there's stuff where I'm talking about finances, hiring, systems, marketing, sales. I'm trying to kind of fit all those different categories, and it helps to know what some of those buckets might be that I want to talk about. For coaches, I might want to talk about, selling and building your book of business. I want to talk about the actual coaching in a group class environment. I want to talk about the hiring process, right? These are all categories that I can fit topics into and are going to help me create more topics in the future. Another mindset shift that you guys can think about as it relates to the creative process is to document, don't create. And this is something that Gary Vee talks about all the time, is to document what you're already doing rather than trying to create based off something you want to do in the future, okay? Start with where your expertise already is. Start with where you're already investing your time today, and then build off that. So the way that could look for a coach is, let's say you go and coach your morning set of classes, or you go and coach a couple personal training sessions. So rather than ending those sessions and then shifting gears and thinking about, okay, it's time for me to create content, what am I going to create content on? Go to those actual sessions. Think about your interactions in class. Think about your interactions in that personal training session. What were the questions that people were asking you? What were the tips that you were sharing? What was the primary thing that you had to coach as it related to a specific movement in class? And rather than trying to create brand new content based on some imaginary topic, create topics based on, or create content based on what you actually faced in those classes, in those personal training sessions, and share that with other people that weren't involved in those sessions, right? You only had a select few people that benefited from your coaching in class. You only had one person that benefited from your personal training session. So share that stuff with a broader audience. The same thing's true with nutrition coaching or one-on-one programming. Think about the questions that you're getting. Maybe sometimes those questions seem overly simplistic or even stupid. You're like, doesn't everybody know this? But they don't. If someone's asking it, then a lot of people don't know that stuff. So try to use the situations you're already facing on a daily basis and then just answer them in a way where it appeals to a slightly broader audience. So along those same lines of thinking about documenting and not creating, I want you guys to also think about creating for yourself first and foremost, and then secondly, creating for others. Okay, and that doesn't mean that you're gonna put out selfish content or anything like that, but think about what your journey was along the way. Think about your journey as an athlete. Think about your journey as a coach. Think about your journey as a gym owner. What were the things that you would have loved to have along the way? What are the things that you just recently figured out yourself, right? A lot of the content that I share with you guys, like a staff playbook, is stuff that we literally just created a month earlier that then I'm turning around and sharing with you guys for you to have. So these are things that I'm building out for myself that I love, that I know are useful. And then I figure that, okay, if I love it and I'm this type of gym owner, then there's got to be other gym owners and coaches that could benefit from this information. Okay, so it helps to be able to be immersed in the product and immersed in the service that you create, and then creating content based on that you think others could benefit from. And then the final piece of this thing is you just have to get started, right? I talk about this being an action-based skill or fitness that you have to develop, and you have to get started, okay? You have to get started in some way, shape, or form. It could be with a simple once-a-week social media post. It could be starting a podcast like I'm doing here. There's a lot of ways that you can attack it, but you have to get started. And if you're struggling getting over the hump, I would encourage you guys to pick up a book called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. It really goes deep into sort of the creative process and the obstacles that keeps even the most prolific writers and creatives out there from doing what they love and doing what they know they should be doing each and every day. So the book, The War of Art, talks about this concept of resistance and how even the best writers feel resistance. The hardest part, he talks about in the book, the hardest part is not writing. The hardest part is not shooting a video. The hardest part is sitting down to write. The hardest part is stepping in front of the camera to actually start that video. Once you get started, everything becomes a lot easier, it becomes a lot more fun. I know for me personally, no matter how productive a day feels, no matter how much I was working and kind of burning the candle at both ends, I rarely feel really, really productive or really accomplished after a day if I haven't done some type of creative work. I really, truly feel that resistance that Steven Pressfield talks about. And I feel it in the sense that if I finished a day, even though I've done a lot really well, if I haven't created an outline for a blog post or a video, I haven't written a blog post, I haven't shot a video like I am today, the day just doesn't feel as successful. So one of my goals is to create every single day of some sort, even if it's just journaling for myself and just writing for my own purposes. But I find that it just really changes my day to create. So I'd highly recommend picking up the book, The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. It's great on audiobook as well. It's a super quick read, and it will really give you guys into a window of how the creative process really works, even for the most successful creators out there. Another recommendation that I've given to some of our coaches before is a single podcast, and it's episode 98 of the Tim Ferriss Show with Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez, for those of you guys that don't know, is a movie producer. He did movies like Desperado, El Mariachi, Sin City, and a few others. And it's really interesting. The first movie that he shot, that El Mariachi movie, he did it with like some crazy budget. He did it with like $10,000 or $20,000 budget. And a lot of the stuff in the movie was stuff that just his friends or family owned. So it was really cool that he was a lot of people think in the creative process you have to have a lot of money, you have a lot of resources, but actually with him, because he had very limited resources, it forced him to be super resourceful. Okay, so the stories that he shares regarding the movie is really cool, but it's really cool how he talks about just creativity in general and his creative process personally. So I'd highly recommend checking out The War of Art as well as that podcast with Robert Rodriguez. And please make more content in 2020. It's going to help a lot more people. It's going to make you a better coach, and it's going to help change lives. Talk to you soon, guys.